from James Merritt. Hi James, I have a few questions. The guy who gave me a protocol for my GI 360 stool test, which came back I had salmonella infection, which we spoke about on the call, and other bacterial imbalances. He said I have celiac and to go gluten and dairy free due to antibodies in my thyroid. He read he that he read off my last blood test results. But I got tested for this not long ago, and the doctors at the doctors for Crohn's and celiac and some others, and they said I didn't have them, and that I had IBS, IBD. So I really don't know. What's your thoughts, mate? Yeah, so obviously you're doing it the alternative therapy way, and then you're including the doctors, and the doctors are saying they're not seeing anything, even though you've got symptoms, and the alternative therapy way is saying do it this way. And James, I just say now, you're never really going to get a doctor that's going to agree with you 100% with alternative therapy, because even if they truly believe in what you're saying, legally they cannot say that. The fact that the doctor says you've got IBS, IBD, IBS obviously inflammatory bowels. Now what is it? Irritable bowel syndrome, and then IBD is inflammatory bowel disease. They're just labeling. That's what they do. You go to the doctors with a digestive issue, they say you've got IBS. If you've got severe digestive issues, they say IBS, IBD. So even though the doctor says you don't have celiac, the test that you did showed that you had antibodies to gluten and antibodies to dairy. That means that the gluten that you was eating and the dairy that you was eating was getting into your blood, sparking an immune response, and then your body was making antibodies to that gluten and to that dairy. So like we discussed on the call, go gluten free and go dairy free. And by all means, like I said before, you can trial raw milk, Hill Farm Organic or Real Foods or whatever. I think we've sent you a link to it before if you want to actually try that dairy. But I think you're not too bothered about cutting out dairy. It's more the gluten. And yeah, if you've got anyone suffering with like IBS, IBD, like generally they feel better without gluten. That's why I say to everyone, like, cut out gluten for 2 weeks and see how much better you feel. And if you don't feel any better or any worse, yeah, you can either reintroduce or continue to stop having gluten. So the fact that you've got antibodies to gluten, and also the fact that our gluten nowadays in our system has been sprayed with glyphosate. So if you're not having organic gluten and you're just getting a sandwich from a shop, it's got glyphosate sprayed on that, and that actually creates inflammation in the intestines. It creates the gaps in the intestinal lining. So most gluten is sprayed with glyphosate. So I think really we've got a glyphosate problem rather than a gluten problem. But because people are consuming the gluten and the glyphosate together, they're getting, like, gluten's getting blamed for all of it. But like I said, I think it's about 50% of people have the right bacteria inside their intestines to digest gluten, and the other 15% don't. 50% don't. So if you're that half of the population that doesn't do well with gluten, stop having it. But if you are that half of the population that if you have gluten and it doesn't give you brain fog and make you feel crap all the time, you can continue to have it. But the fact that you've got antibodies to gluten, I'd go, like I said before, cut it out for 2 weeks and see how much better you feel. And like I said, you're never going to get a doctor to agree with like alternative therapy and or holistic therapist or anyone that does alternative therapies, because it was 1911 they brought out something called the Flexner Report, and what that was, it was the Rockefellers paid Dr. Flexner to do a report that said all herbs, plants, and all these therapies that was used before 1911 would all get labelled alternative, and then they'll bring in the pharmaceutical medications, and that was called medicine. So all the existing medicine that was like herbs and stuff like that got swept to the side. All energy medicine got swept to the side, and then they just brought in pharmaceuticals because they could make more money from their oil by turning oil into medicines rather than just selling oil as it was. So yeah, ever since 1911, you're probably never going to get a doctor agree with you. And if they are agreeing with alternative therapy, they're sort of going against what they're legally bound by a contract to say. So, yeah, I think I've beat that horse to death on that question anyway. So,